one of the things I'd like to start off with is I'll be doing the Bee Talk. I don't have a PowerPoint. Blake's on vacation, but I'd like to let you know our state fair is a go. For those that are looking to volunteer, we have the volunteer schedule coming out. If you will contact my dad at john@sabinecreekhoney.com, and I will post that in the chat once we get started. With our speaker today, which is Ashley Ralph again, and we love Ashley coming to speak to us. Not only is she speaking, but she's part of the TBA. So she's our current TBA president until November or otherwise dictated. But we like having her. So if you are interested in the state fair, please get my dad an email quickly. That will start on the 24th, which is just a little over 2 weeks away, roughly. So we would need to get you in there fast and get the time slot scheduled quickly if you want to volunteer on that. They will be, for any indoor activities at the state fair, you will have to wear a mask. So just let you get that out there, that anything inside, you will be required to wear a mask. Also, there will be a wellness check that we need to have on file there to fill out each day. That the state fair can check on us every day if they want to check on us. So it's just basically a quick wellness check to say, hey, you're good, there's no symptoms, and you got to have that on file there. We'll have that in a booklet, but we want to get that out to you so you know what it looks like. So we will go to the Bee Talk. So that there's not a whole lot for this month as far as the for your bees. The biggest thing is prepping them for your winter time coming up. You should always be prepping, I say 6 months in advance. So if you're, by the summertime, you should have been working on getting your bees ready for the winter time. You definitely need to check for varroa. That is one of the main concerns out there, is any kind of check on there, the powdered sugar roll, or if you actually go out there and buy the alcohol testing, you can buy those at your bee supply stores, or if you want to just do it yourself in a mason jar, you can do that, but you need to be able to check your varroa mite levels. I know in our yard we had a few high levels, so we've been doing our treatment. We've got treatment on now, which I use an Apivar. There's the other processes out there. Like I said, we've had plenty of instruction from several people that told you how to use the pyramid. So you can go all the way from the organic to the chemical basis. So, like I said, it's up to you. You can always use the website at the is it the BIP or Honeybee Health Coalition? Let me double check here. I think it's the Honeybee Health it's either the Honeybee Health Coalition or the BIP site that lets you know. You can go in there, answer the questions. You could tell them, hey, this is what I want to do, and it'll actually tell you how to treat for your varroa mite. So that is a good tool to have out there. It's Honeybee Health Coalition that you can use for that one. So make sure you examine your hives carefully. You want to look for any kind of failing queens. This would be the time if you need to combine hives because you have queens that are failing. You would want to make that combine those weak hives with the stronger hives and move those over. Because pretty much if that queen starts to fail and you're seeing signs of her failing, she probably will not make it through the winter time. So you want to make sure you do that. So examine those very carefully. Continue to feed. So you can use the 1-to-1, which would be mimicking the nectar flow. So we are in a fall flow a little bit. We're still seeing lots of snow on the prairie out there. There's some of the what they call prairie coreopsis, or the prairie pea, and then there's the broomweed is starting to come out. So the little flowers look like yellow daisies, really small, and a big pattern on a stalk. That is the broomweed that's coming out there. So we are getting some of our fall flowers coming in. I have not seen any goldenrod yet, or any of the asters, which will be ground cover for the asters, and then the goldenrod will be a nice long. But I have been seeing the stalks starting to come up, so they just haven't got any of the blooms ready to go yet. So those are coming out. We just want to make sure that you are monitoring your hive weight in there. But like I said, you can lift it up. 30 to 40 pounds is a good weight to make sure that you've got plenty of honey or some stores in there. But like I said, we just have to wait to see what the flowers are going to look like. Hopefully we'll get a little bit of rain. I know that the weatherman has been saying it may miss our area, but we're hoping for a little bit of rain. I know the down south guys are going to get hammered here pretty soon. So those guys are definitely, and I see Justin on video with Ashley. So I know he's got to be putting his stuff together and trying to keep them from blowing away. But so hopefully we'll get some rain out of this, kind of help our flowers along. So that's a big concern, is that we will get some rain and our flowers will come on. Hopefully we'll have a good season for the fall flowers. They should have been well, I don't forget what you call it, germinated, because they had lots of spring rain. So they should be doing well. So hopefully that will be looking good for strong hives. So that is the tips I have, besides, like I said, besides the state fair. Just another note, we will be coming up on our November meeting will be nominations for our officers. So if you're interested in coming onto the board or holding a board position, we'd like to get your names if you're interested. I am up for a second term. Stephen is up for a second term as vice president. So we will put our names in for those, or those that will that want to. We also have our treasurer position. We'll have Mike back in there, and then I think our current secretary is going to continue on. But all those positions are available for the next year if you're interested. So we would just put those nominations out there. So we'd like to start getting those together so we can start working those for our November meeting. Like I said, we'll be back on Zoom. So our October meeting will be a Zoom call, and the November meeting will be Zoom call. We will work on our December meeting. We're still looking for locations that we could do for our Christmas party. So just that will be one thing we work on at our business meeting, which is next week. So if you're interested in the business meeting for next week, it will be a Zoom call. So we will work that, and you can get on. And if you're interested in helping us find a place or help us coordinate the Christmas party, you come on to that meeting, and we will definitely put you to work. We definitely believe in volunteers, and that's how our club keeps running. So that is all I have now. I mean, if you have any questions, just throw them in the chat. I'll be monitoring the chat box. If not, I'm going to turn this over to Ashley. Ashley's been with us for quite a while. She's been on the Collin County speaker rotation for quite a while. She did, I think the last one was a couple of years ago in April, when she told us all about how to do ag exemptions. And so it's good to have her back in the rotation again and talking to us. Like I said, I'm going to be reading up on ag exemptions because the money's flowing over here, and I need to start making some money.
Well, you guys, if I remember correctly, are in a little bit of a weird place for ag exemptions. So good luck.
Just to let you know, land price on the tax, what I've been seeing on our tax rolls here is $16,000. They've been selling the land price for $30,000.
Oh, wow.
So they're about to be hammered with
elevated taxes. That's always an issue around here too. I think we've been able to kind of stave off the county. And side note, you can thank all of the realtors that you know for lobbying for percentage tax increase, like maximums. So it won't happen overnight, at least. That was the best they could do. But anyway. Okay, well, I'm Ashley. Skip kind of told everybody half our presentation with his how to get your bees through the next few months, but we'll do our best to elaborate and give you guys a little bit more. And then obviously, I'm not sure. I think last time we were able to do some, chat questions and stuff too. So we'll try to accommodate.
I can monitor that too. So if you got something comes up, then we can either do it at the end, or if you want to do it in between.
Yeah, that sounds great. Either way is fine, honestly. We try to watch the chats, but it's kind of a lot when you're virtual. So anyway, I do have a presentation. So let me see if I can get that up and then we'll start talking. In the meantime, I will go ahead and say that we have the TBA convention coming up as well. So I'd really love to see as many of you guys who can make it down to Galveston. I know it's a far drive, but it's going to be a really awesome event. It's at the Moody Gardens. So if you can bring friends, family, and make a weekend of it, that's what I would recommend. I think it's going to be really nice. It'll be a lot of fun. And it's actually on the weekend, the full weekend, instead of a Friday, Saturday, like we've done in the past, or at least in the recent past. So kind of hoping that that works out for this year. So please help our event planners out by showing up and participating, because they work really hard to bring quality speakers and other activities. I know there's going to be a lot of really cool demonstrations and everything else. And then obviously we'll have our business meeting that Saturday. So if you are a member of TBA, it's a good time to kind of come and see what we've been up to, especially since we didn't get to meet last year. So it's almost like a 2-year update, which is awkward, but it'll be fun. This is Justin. This is my husband. He does pretty much the operations for our business. We own Prime Bees here in College Station, and we actually are currently getting rain. So we're in our shop right now at the farm, and if it gets really loud, I will apologize in advance because we have a metal roof, and it could get a little crazy as tropical storms head our way, which we're not complaining about. All right, so anything else I need to talk about, Skip, with TBA stuff? Obviously, if y'all have donations for the raffle, the THBEA raffle, the Texas Honeybee Education Association is having their raffle and their auctions and stuff coming up for the convention as well. So if you have bee stuff or, even non-bee stuff like an Airbnb that you want to donate a night or two at or something like that to help raise some money would be really cool. I don't know. I'll ask for everything and then you guys can choose how you want to participate. All right, so we can get started. Hopefully I'll be able to get us through this presentation without technical difficulties, but you guys can see the screen, right?
Yes.
Okay, sweet. All right, so we're going to talk about fall and winter. And as Skip said, well, there will be some things that have already been said in this talk that pop up on our screen. So you guys can thank Skip for being y'all's fearless leader and knowing all the things already. All right. So Skip mentioned that he likes to think about 6 months ahead. I usually, when I'm talking to newer beekeepers, I think that's almost impossible to do, right? Because they don't know what 6 months looks like, because it's maybe their first or second season. But you can at the very least be 30 to 60 days ahead, maybe even a few months ahead, knowing that what you're doing in your yard today is going to take time to make a difference. So, when we're talking, the most prominent example of this is that really fall prep starts, or winter prep starts in June and July. So making sure that when you harvest honey, you're leaving enough there, that you've got healthy bees. We talked about varroa and some other stuff. What else?
Yeah, that's might count, but we'll go through it all.
Okay. So we're going to be planning ahead for sure. Oops. The biggest factors that we're dealing with is going to be that nutrition, the food storage. I got to move so I can read my stuff. Give me just a second. There we go. Nutrition, food stores, and then also varroa mite count. A lot of people We don't do a lot of talking about treatments in this particular class because bluntly, there's just a lot of different camps for the best way to move forward with that. And so if you guys have specific treatment questions, we can dig into that. But for the most part, our general advice is know what your mite counts are, and react according to, you know, the plan that you have for your bees. You know, when we talk to new beekeepers, one of the first things we're saying to them is we're not going to tell you how you have to keep bees, but we are going to tell you what you need to know so that you can make those decisions, including how to manage your mite loads. Obviously, the colony size and the cluster are going to play a huge role. So that's kind of two factors, right? Like the actual population of the bees that you have in the box, and then the box itself. Well, the size of the cavity that you have them in. And then avoid water penetration. I think Justin added that one.
Yeah, because honestly, whenever we're looking at things that bees need, they want to stay dry. That's one of the most important things that they're looking for, is they don't like to get wet. And I've seen having a hole in the top or a hive and whatnot, forcing absconds because they want to go look for someplace better. They'll end up moving into a tire instead of your hive that has a hole in the top. So that's one of those main things that bees are always looking for, is just basically a roof over their head.
Yep. Oh gosh, I keep wanting to use my arrow and it is not working. There we go. All right, so digging into that space management, which we did just give you a little bit of a preview to, but essentially when you're looking at the decrease time frame, right? So we just spent all of spring and most of summer increasing our population. And then now we're heading into, you know, the summer solstice happened, everything from that point forward, the days are getting shorter. And at that point, the bees start intuitively understanding that it's about to get cold, you know, 6 months from now, essentially, like Skip said, they start going into decrease mode. And that's what, when we talk about the colony and cluster, I know a lot of you guys are not new to this, but when we talk about the colony and the cluster, you start seeing that brood nest go from 10 frames down to 6, down to 4, down to 2, down to, is she even laying? Do I have a queen? That's pretty much what starts to be noticed by our beekeepers.
Yeah, but right now, during this month, and also October, is not whenever I start reducing the size of our hives. I actually start kind of anticipating, because you guys are kind of on the same schedule we are. You have that snow in the prairie out there, and goldenrod is about to pop. And so whenever I see the goldenrod starting to get to the height and I start to see the buds, I know that we're going to have this extra little flow, and I really don't want to be caught left behind and have their boxes too small. And next thing I know, they just backfill their whole brood nest. So I always make sure that I give them a little bit of extra room all the way up until November is whenever I really like to start beating down the boxes, I say. And that's where I take everybody and I start pushing them down into smaller cavities. And then I let them start backfilling their brood nest with syrup and stuff. But right now, I'm looking
at fall flow.
Yeah,
basically.
I'm looking for that fall flow, and like fingers crossed that it's going to be way better than the spring flow.
Yeah, this is really our favorite time to be talking about fall and winter management, especially for people who are kind of still figuring out the rhythm of beekeeping, because it is weird. We feel like fall is coming. You start seeing pumpkin spice lattes and stuff like that, but then we've still got a fall flow and the potential for bees swarming, and it's so it can be a little chaotic for us as beekeepers, especially when you haven't kind of figured out how your flow works in your little micro climate. So, all right. So to be fair, we are talking on this slide primarily about when it's truly time to decrease. So when you're starting to kind of bat down those hives, which you would do after the fall flow finishes.
And so I really don't think about reducing everything until I have that temperature drop and I see the flowers going away and we're starting to lose a little bit more activity. Whenever we actually start seeing nights that are below 50, whenever we start getting into 40s and stuff like that, I know that winter's actually coming. But if you look at y'all's first freeze is going to be a little bit different than ours, but I'm always keeping that like eye out for that first freeze. And then I know that we had a lot of flowers die off.
Well, and not that many people take a tremendous amount of the fall flow anyway. So a lot of this, we're talking about reducing the size of a colony. You may find that you don't have to, you may just be filling up the boxes that you've got. You look at it. It's just, you have to be aware that this is a potential issue for your bees going into actual winter. So your first bet is always, space management you're watching all year round, but you're just making sure they have enough space. It's not quite like the spring flow as far as just filling out frames, but it is still going to take up space.
Yeah,
as they start backfilling the brood nest.
Yeah, and the fall flow is not, I'm not looking to collect any kind of honey product or anything of that nature. I'm looking just for them to stock up. And so I need to know what's going on with what they're bringing in versus what we need to be feeding them to stock up or actually to stimulate brood production, stuff of that nature. But yeah, I don't pull any of our fall honey because it has goldenrod in it and it's not really palatable.
I mean, I don't hate it, but so when we're talking about space management, we've really kind of harped on the size of the box that the bees are left in. But other factors that you're going to consider are going to be, as you look at your entire yard, which may be one hive or it may be 50 hives, you're kind of equalizing things because every time you start heading into, once the flows stop and you've still got a pretty heavy population of foragers and stuff like that, you become a little bit more at risk for robbing or any other sort of behavior like that. So, space management has multiple reasons why it's in like the top 4 of beekeeping practices that you need to master. So that also keeping your bee population higher is going to keep you from having pest issues like wax moths or even mice, other things that might try to overwinter with your bees. And then you give them a better chance of when it actually freezes or snows, like we had like two snow. We had a lot of snow last winter.
We're not talking snow this year.
I'm just saying, I'm like thinking about it. I'm like, wow, like I feel like I had multiple snowy hive times where I went out and had like a little mini photo shoot. So,
but the blizzard, the snow apocalypse, we were actually in California.
Well, we didn't, but I took pictures of our backyard hives. Anyway, side note. All right. So that's the big reason for space management being such a prominent part of fall and even winter management. God, I gotta stop moving my mouse. It's like, there we go. I went backwards, didn't I? All right. You like this one? You want to talk? Go for it.
This is one of those things that I see it first year all over the place. People don't really have a reason to be going into the boxes other than the fact that they just want to open the box.
And we get it. It's fun.
I like looking at them too, but there's a time and there needs to be a reason. And if it's cold, like that box can wait a couple of days until it warms up to actually take a look in them. Because even if it's cold outside and you think they're starving and you open it up and they are starving, there's not a lot you could do other than maybe a little bit of dry feed, but you probably already lost them unless you drop in a frame of honey. But my biggest thing is whenever I open up that box, like I have a reason why I'm opening it. I'm looking at population, or I want to see if it's queen right, or I want to check stores. it's not one of those
Or you're
things.
worried about it because maybe you already like test it, you lifted it up a little bit and it feels really light, or used, like, for example, a heat sensing camera, or there's not a lot of activity at the front on days where it's warmer or something like that. So those are the types of reasons why when he says he has a reason, he sees something that's suspicious.
Yeah. And it's one of those things that
And we're
I
talking again after we've
put them down and got them into their
sometime around Thanksgiving, when
Yeah,
you've
they're-
sort of stopped messing with them on a
Yeah.
weekly basis.
yeah, their winter cluster. They're in their box configuration for the winter time. And I kind of have the lids battened down to say, it's one of those things that they don't want you going in there and splitting their boxes and just having them open for no reason. Because it just affects their whole shtick of everything that they're doing inside there. Because they're going to have to work harder to replace and fix the things that you have been fiddling with.
And I think the biggest thing that I try to convey to people, because it's something I really have never been that great at, but kind of have to do with beekeeping, is, just watching the weather 5 days out, 7 days out, 10 days out, and knowing, okay, so we're about to go into a cold snap, rather than right before the cold snap going and messing with your bees, right? Just know that as soon as that cold snap is over, you want to get into your bees. And the reason why it seems counterintuitive, right? Because you want to check on them. The reason why it's better to wait is that they've already got that propolis seal. They've already got their hive nice and secure. And every time we go in and start messing with it, they're just going to have to re-secure their home. It's going to allow essentially water, air, whatever, to get through those gaps that they had already sealed up.
Yeah.
So to me, that was counterintuitive, because I wanted to make sure they were fine before it got cold. I don't know, because that's what you do with mammals, right? But it's
Yeah.
just not what you do with bees.
And as beekeepers, we hate knowing this, but usually a lot of times bees kind of know what they're doing. And
Most of the time.
And bees actually do pretty well without us a lot of times. So they've been building up, they've been doing their thing. And
As long as you didn't overly harvest honey, or, as long as you've done what you need to do to kind of help them through the preparation part, you should be able to leave them alone for the cold snaps without stressing out. Okay. All right. So feeding, we tend to tell people to keep this super simple and not stress out about the exact ratios and how to mix sugar water. But the general rule is a little bit thicker syrup in the winter is a good idea. They get more of those carbohydrates for less work, right? They're not having to dehydrate it quite as much to get the carbohydrates that they need. So that's where that water ratio, sugar to water ratio is increased during the winter. You can even feed 2 to 1 in the summer, bluntly, but
I like the 2 to 1 because it doesn't freeze.
see, there you go. All that sugar. Add a little salt.
Mm.
No?
you could do trace minerals. But honestly, I do 1 to 1 all year. And I never really even bother with 2 to 1, because I try to be so far ahead that I'm not worrying about them putting it away, because they should already have it put away. That's what we've been working on, all fall. So whenever I am doing a little bit of feeding at weird times, it's always 1 to 1, because I'm trying to do stimulation and not put it away.
Yeah. I mean, it obviously depends on what your goals are. Most people aren't trying to have their bees ready to go on a semi truck in February, so some of the stuff that we do isn't what we tell people they should do. But if you are looking to put your bees on a truck in February and send them to almonds, we can have a separate talk about that.
So but the 2 to 1 is kind of for them to pack it away and put it in the pantry. And I really like to have all the groceries put away way before we even think about hitting the cold snap, right?
Yeah. So when we say only feed if necessary, the biggest thing here is that, like Skip has said and probably says quite a bit to this group, because I know we say it a lot to ours. I mean, you really are 3 months, 6 months ahead, right? And so, if you're stressing out that your bees don't have enough stores right this second, you do have a fall flow coming on. You may want to be kind of supplementing them for a little bit until they get through that. But come November 1st, they should be set. November 1st, November 15th. That's when Thanksgiving is, like the 20th ish, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. So we usually use Thanksgiving as our like goal to be done, just as a general idea of a rule of thumb. But again, at that point, we're basically looking at, what's going on this year with weather and everything else too. So did we miss anything on here? Okay. Yeah. So the amount of stores needed being proportional to the cluster size. I see a lot of times newer beekeepers want to know exactly how many frames of honey that they need to have.
Yeah. And that's such a subjective question, because if you have a huge colony, you're going to, of course, you're going to need way more frames of honey to support that colony through the winter. But if you got a little baby 5-frame nuke, you're going to need a lot less stores.
Don't give them 2 supers of honey.
Exactly. So it is very subjective, and it all comes down to how big the colony really truly is. And then that helps you kind of judge. So whenever people give you these like rules to live by, I just kind of go, oh yeah, kind of maybe, but
which I realize isn't helpful. I think like gardening or anything else, you kind of have to just water too much and then water too little, and then you kind of find that just right,
that happy spot.
Mhm.
And I will tell you, I'd rather leave too much honey on a hive and too much
Within
stores
reason. Yeah.
than not enough. So whenever I err, I always go more to the side of making them fat instead of skinny.
Yeah. So like for the first, I don't know, probably 5 years that we were doing this, we kept them always in 2 super or 2 deeps. And, now that we have more bees and stuff like that, we've kept them in some in a deep and a medium or something like that. And that tends to be fine for Texas. We've also overwintered nukes. And the biggest tip that I would give you, if that is a plan of yours, because it's kind of fun to overwinter nukes, to be honest, but the biggest tip I would give you is, just keep them in those smaller boxes rather than trying to put them in big boxes.
And they usually, I've noticed my overwinter nukes.
And then keep them around your other hives. Like you can keep them sorted together too.
Yep. My overwinter nukes usually are at the point of starvation around February 1st or Valentine's Day. Yeah. So Valentine's Day is kind of my like marker. Hey, I need to make sure and check all the nukes for sure, because I think they're probably going to be running out of stores.
They're starting to get hungry. And it depends again on like the weather, right? If we had an exceptionally warm winter, then we may have to feed earlier because they spent more energy. Again, some of the stuff seems counterintuitive, or it did to me as I was learning. So I'm like, oh, it's warmer, they'll just go find stuff. And that's kind of true, but mostly pollen, right? And not a lot of carbohydrates, unless they're just like robbing people's soda fountains and hummingbird feeders.
Or they're robbing out your neighbor's hives.
Yeah. So anyway, all right. So, and then again, I will just reiterate, we're not just feeding to feed. That can lead to other problems, right? Like backfilling the brood nest. So you can just as easily overfeed your bees to the point of literally killing them because the queen can't lay, the population dwindles, all of a sudden the hive just fails. And they were reasonably healthy before then. So you can mess stuff up by trying to feed them too much out of fear.
Mm-hmm.
Not to scare you, but it is a possibility. We're probably making people like, why the heck are we doing this? Okay. I almost took this slide out. That's why I'm like, so most of you already have your feeders. If you don't, this is just an overview of the different types of feeders. The most common, the most recommended, I would think would be the, I don't know if y'all can see the mouse when I do this, but either this kind of top feeder or this in hive feeder for going into winter. I would not be using a Boardman feeder.
The only way I'd use that is if I actually if I had a inner cover on, and then I put extra super, and then I put that feeder
Like in a top,
inside the
which
extra,
you can do with this guy too. These two.
the chicken water.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd like to put those actually inside the hive, but in an extra box on top, just to keep it out of the elements. And I don't like advertising to all the other bees and all the other critters that we're feeding. So I really like to keep everything hush hush and kind of incognito inside the box.
It's like a speakeasy.
Pretty much.
Okay.
I was gonna say,
Baggies. Do you want to talk about baggies or no?
yeah, well, baggie feeding is just filling up a bag and putting it on top of the bars and poking a couple little baby holes in it. And
it works decently
yeah,
well, unless you're going into like a super cold time.
Yeah. And also what they will do is, this is going to sound kind of weird, but if it does get cold and there is a bag of feed on top of their frames, they will actually cluster underneath that bag and make it kind of like a little barrier between them and the cold. I've seen it where a lid will blow off and they actually survive underneath the baggie. Another thing real quick to talk about feeding, I don't think this is in any of the slides, but I run into the treatment-free camp talks about how, or I'll run into people who say that you don't need to feed bees at all.
Ever.
Like, ever. And I say that that's fine. Like if that's how somebody wants to believe, or that's how they feel that they should manage their bees. I have this saying that I always say that you can kill your bees any way you want. Like, they're your bees, do whatever you want. But at the end of the day, whenever people are like, no, bees are more natural by not feeding them, you're going to make them lazy. They should be able to get everything on their own. I hear a lot of stuff like that. But then whenever I look at the same person, I say, well, do you harvest honey from these hives? And they're like, of course I do. That's why I have the bees. And I'm like, well, it's not natural for you to steal all their supplies and then expect them to go out and retrieve whole nother round of supplies, because that's not how it's set up. So if you have bees and you're keeping bees and you don't ever rob honey and you just have some boxes out there and you never touch them, then yeah, you probably don't ever have to feed them. Like they're doing their
They'll
thing.
either make it or not.
Yeah, they're doing their thing. They collect all that summer honey and the spring honey, and they still have it in the fall. We don't worry about feeding. You don't worry about supplies. You just let them go. Like, that's bee having, not beekeeping. But like I said, they're
It's your prerogative.
They're your bees. So
Okay, he's being judgy, so we're gonna move slides.
I'm not judgy.
All right. Okay, so we talk about avoiding robbing with we teach the second year youth, and they're starting to kind of like get the hang of beekeeping, but they still take a really long time to inspect their hives. And so there's drama happening outside, apparently. And so part of what, and we're not even in air conditioning, y'all. This is fun. So part of what we're talking to them about is, as you get into really even late summer, when the dearth is kind of hitting, the flowers are dwindling, there's not as much food for bees to forage, really making sure that you're being mindful of the fact that robbing can occur and that you can contribute to to basically advertising that you've got bees there that are ready to be robbed. So doing things like avoiding open feeding, making sure that you're doing really quick hive inspections. If you spill something, whether it's the sugar that you're feeding the bees, or, you pull up some frames that have honey, that are honey bound in there, and you're like oozing honey, it's a good idea to have like a gallon of water or something like that with you so that you can wash it off.
Yeah, we carry around a spray bottle of water and bleach. And that's what we use to clean up in case we get syrup on a lid or a box or whatever. We don't continue feeding. If we do a spill, we stop right then and there and we clean up the spill, and then we'll continue feeding.
And that's primarily, like I said, when there's not as much stuff for the bees to be doing as far as like natural forage. And then the other rule that we have is that if we're going out into a yard to feed, we're not feeding the ones at that point, we're not feeding the ones that need feeding, which is counterintuitive to what we said on the last slide. But the reason is that, if we're in one yard and we give a couple of hives sugar syrup, and we don't do it for all of them, then those ones that don't have it are going to smell it and want it, and try to go get it.
Yeah.
So we give them something to occupy themselves with.
And it is kind of one of those things. So if we get into a larger hive and they have a lot of supplies, I'm not dumping 2 gallons of feed in them. I'm just giving them like
Something to
tie
keep them from
busy while the other ones actually get to like enjoy their meal. So, we'll get into something that's a little bit larger, and I'll drop just a quart of syrup in it. And then I'll go to the next one and it's almost empty and they're getting a gallon or 2 of syrup.
Yeah. So the biggest thing that you can do if you're just dealing with, your one yard is if you feed later in the evening, right before the sun goes down, you should just shut them out. She's just coming in and out. There's nothing out there. Basically, you can talk about the fact that doing it in the middle of the day means that those foragers are out and about and they're not around and they're not going to be bothering each other. But the biggest reason why we still advocate for the evening time is that if something happens, there's only so long it's going to happen before the sun goes down and everybody goes home anyway. So especially if you're just getting started, that can be a good thing to do. And then these robbing screens and entrance reducers can be a really good tool for you, especially for those weaker hives that you're maybe worried about.
And then one other little pro tip, I carry a blanket around in my truck.
Like a sheet or something.
A sheet or a blanket. So what happens is
I have that.
If I do run, yeah, right there. Hey, so I always have a blanket in case, I get stuck on the side of the road and I need to take a nap, or if I have robbing, and it helps out quite a bit. You just cover the whole hive with a blanket, and the ones that belong there will crawl up underneath the blanket to get to the hive. And the ones who don't belong there just kind of give up usually.
Yeah, our favorite tool for like our backyard bees is the sprinkler, because it's just easy. You just like hit on the sprinkler and then they just all kind of stop. We've used it when we had roofers re-roofing our roof.
Yep.
That's a really smart like pro tip if you ever need to keep your bees on their best behavior while there's contractors outside or around. That can be brilliant. When he did that, I was like, oh my gosh, I married a genius.
That's why I get paid the big bucks.
All right. So we'll explain these because we're not saying you can't or shouldn't necessarily do this stuff, but you don't have to. And so there's a lot of, I think, as winter approaches, people start talking about all of their favorite recipes for this, that, and the other. Again, the reason why we don't recommend this is because you really should have been feeding your bees thinking with that 6 months ahead stuff, right? Fondant and board candy for us are an emergency only situation. We're not doing that just to keep the bees occupied. We would do that to save a hive.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
I
don't know why I'm talking like they're going to be able to say like, yes. Okay.
I'm always, if I looked at the fondant, because most of I hear that from is northern beekeepers when they're shut up for 4 months at a
I've seen it more in Texas lately, though. It seems like
I
the
don't
last couple of
understand,
years people have been talking about it, and that's fine. I mean, it has a purpose, right? But I wouldn't default to that as like my, Thanksgiving activity is making fondant and board candy with my family to go put out on the hives. Like that doesn't need to be a thing.
Yeah, because so in beekeeping, I'm not a minimalist, but I really don't want to go over any extra steps that I don't have to. Right. So if there's an easier way to do something or a quicker way to do something, or just cut something out altogether that I don't have to do, like that's where I want to be. I don't like having to redo stuff or put something on there just because I messed something up at the beginning of the year or beginning of the fall and didn't feed, and then I have to put a fondant on there because my hives are starving or something of that nature. Instead, I'd rather just do my homework, and then whenever test time comes, I just ace it.
Ace it. Okay. Protein patties. Realistically, I mean, a lot of people think they're getting a ton of protein off those. It's not that much protein. It's primarily a carbohydrate, to be really honest. So it's, again, just another way to feed them energy, essentially.
Yeah, and so I always ask people like, hey,
Why?
are you doing it? And if you don't have a reason why you're feeding them protein patties, then I'm like, why are you doing that? I feel like you're wasting your money. You're trying to invite small hive beetles. Unless you have some type of agenda and you're like, well, I gotta have my bees ready for this or that, or like, okay, then yeah, load it up with the protein patties, go at it. But most people who keep bees as a hobby or even a sidelining, you don't need to have your bees rearing brood all year and being full-blown hives in February. Like you just don't need that.
Let them go through their natural brood break cycle, let them go through their natural slow down cycle. And I mean, honestly, there's science to show that benefits the bees anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So letting them do that is good. Wrapping hives, here it becomes more of a moisture issue. We don't need to wrap hives and trap stuff in.
I mean, honestly, if you are so concerned that your hives are going to be hit by the wind or something of that nature, then put up a windbreak. But bees do just fine here in Texas without any kind of wrapping or weird insulation or anything like that.
One of my favorite things to do is look at the hives. It's really fun in February just because we're messing with them in February anyway to load them up, and they end up at eye level on these trucks so I can see them. And the amount, like my favorite thing to look at is how much propolis they end up putting in those entrances, and they make it exactly the size they want it to be. And so for some of the hives, it's literally a little hole or 3 that the bees can climb through. And for others, it's like, I don't know, like 5 bees wide. And so we just kind of let them do their own thing.
Yeah.
I think it's really fun.
And so like,
I don't,
if we were covered in snow for months at a time and like we really had a winter, then yeah, we could talk about wrapping hives and stuff like that. But here in Texas, it is absolutely not necessary.
And even the snow really just insulates the hives when it snows. So the biggest thing you have to worry about is freezing rain and wind. And so, just being a little more conscious about how wind hits your property and where you put your bees is probably a better use of your time.
Yeah. And I mean, it gets back into that whole water penetration thing. Look, if you got a hole in your lid and it's raining / freezing, yeah, that's a good way to kill a hive. Like that's.
We already talked about liquid feeding prior to cold snap or freeze, and that can be a bad choice. And then obviously heaters. Bees are pretty good at regulating their own temperature. So I wouldn't stress about having to bring in artificial heat.
I mean, just an example is we're a little bit south of you guys, but I know of open air hives that can survive in our area year round here without freezing out, even through the blizzard and everything. They were able to survive without a cavity.
Yeah.
They were out in the open and they just made it.
So let's say you get your bees ready, you buckle them up. They don't require constant feeding. You are now in December or January and you are bored out of your mind because you don't get to play with your bees.
Yeah, so you shouldn't be playing with your bees in December.
It's always super hard. I don't know how many of you guys are on social media, but around that time is when like the Australian beekeepers start talking about, they're like showing pictures of their brood. And we're over here like, I haven't seen my bees in months and I want them back, or at least in a little while. So anyway, to keep yourself occupied, there are plenty of other things you guys can do. I don't know. I lost anyway, this isn't formatted correctly. Under wax storage is supposed to be that freeze or paramoth crystals. But basically you can make sure that your wax stays as pristine as possible. That is extremely important. If you have the ability to get your wax through the winter, you should do it. It can really boost your hives in the spring once they start packing away nectar again.
Yeah. I mean, in my book, I feel that good drawn comb is just as important as bees almost, because I can take a little bit of bees and give them drawn comb and make a lot of bees. So I drawn comb is
helps bounce back from your winter losses and stuff.
Is one of your greatest assets. So either freeze it and keep it frozen, or freeze it and then put paramoth on it. There's a couple ways to do it. There's BT out there, the stuff that you could spray on, but I'm not a big fan of it. I've tried it. I can never get it to, I still got infestations. So I just got away from that stuff. But yeah, wax moth crystals do work. And then whenever it comes down, after you freeze it, or if you don't have any kind of infestation, you can keep it at we usually keep our cooler at 50 degrees, and we can keep all of our supers at 50 instead of just keeping them frozen all through the winter. And as long as we keep them at 50, it keeps the moths out, and we save all of our comb that way.
All right. And then maybe the more obvious thing is to build and repair equipment. So if you went into winter with 10 hives, that means that come spring, you could pretty easily have 20. So if that's a goal of yours, you should have boxes to put them in. And I always see people complaining about not being able to get their boxes and equipment in spring. And part of the reason is because they did not plan ahead and order in November, December, January, or whatever. So you can definitely avoid being one of those people by getting your equipment early.
Yeah, it's without doubt.
We've been those people. So this isn't judgment. This is just facts.
I mean, I do order a lot of equipment in the spring, but that's a cash flow kind of thing. If I had the money,
we would just have the equipment already.
Anytime I get money, I'm buying equipment, because equipment is pretty much all I really think about. But I always tell people whenever they ask, like, how can you grow a bee business and stuff like that? I'm like, the bees are easy. It's the equipment that's the expensive part. It's the time consuming part. It's what you need the most, because if you got a little bit of bees and a lot of equipment,
you can eventually fill up those boxes.
As long as you know what you're doing.
And then that includes ordering queens and bees. So, we're already talking with people who are looking at buying 10, 15 hives in the spring, especially if you're looking to buy bigger amounts. It's a good idea to kind of shop earlier and just get on the list for your bee provider. And then queens, especially if you have a lot that you need, then you definitely want to do that early. But even if you're not ordering that many, getting on the list again early means that you're going to be in that first round of consumer bees, queen bees, instead of having to wait until they've fulfilled all of their pre-orders and then they're finally giving people bees that thought about it in February or March. Yeah. Most people start thinking about it in March and need them in April. They're not going to get them in April if you're thinking about it in March. Maybe if you're lucky and you have like a local bee provider, that is possible. I'm not trying to say that, but I mean, even we've bought bee weaver queens and it can be hard to get them in March and April. So, and we're neighbors to them. So just keep that in mind, depending on what you're trying to do.
I mean, also this is one of those points also where you can do a little bit of education, read up, especially if you're thinking about raising queens in the spring, read all the books, watch some videos,
learn.
Yeah. I mean, there's no reason to ever stop learning. I don't care how many years you've said you've been beekeeping. There's always going to be new tricks. There's always going to be something that somebody else does different. And even if you don't agree with them, at least see what they're doing. And then you could, kind of make your own playbook from what they do. And that's one of the biggest things I do.
We've had more than one time where we've said, oh, we don't do that. And then now we do that or whatever. So keep an open mind and keep learning.
Yep. Constantly changing.
I think
quick plug for education. You can always go to the TBA conference or the summer clinic.
That's what I'm talking about. That's right. And I expect that everyone on this call will be there. So I'll be checking the registration numbers after this. And that's it, y'all. Y'all can always reach us online. We do try to answer people pretty quickly.
Were there any questions over in the chat or anything?
I don't think so. I think
I've answered most of them, but I got one at the last one.
Oh, you've been over there answering questions for us?
Oh yeah.
You're so kind.
Well, and then plus some of them, they just had to wait a little bit and you were already answering them for you.
I don't even know. I guess I have to stop sharing my screen maybe.
Yeah, when you're sharing screen, it's hard. But
there it is.
Somebody was asking about harvesting again, and I spoke to somebody else. Just realize that your fall honey is not the best table grade honey. It's a little bit more bitter. I always say
people do like it.
Yeah, but I always say it's a good cooking honey. So
yeah, I mean, I actually do really like fall honey. I'll be right back.
I mean, I'll be honest. I don't like it. Anytime goldenrod gets mixed into it, I don't like the smell. I don't like the taste. It's pretty much, it needs to stay on there. And so whenever we're actually extracting, if for some reason we get a goldenrod frame or box or anything like that, we're constantly tasting frames as they're going through the extraction process. And if we hit goldenrod, we pull it right then and there because I don't want it ever mixed with any of our good stuff.
So this is like our typical, golden sort of amber color, right? Like what you would expect ish. And then I have this jar that's like, I could shine a light through this and you probably couldn't even see it.
Yeah, it's black. It's molasses.
It's outrageously colored anyway. And it's so fun to let people taste these, to taste them. Because when we do our tours and honey tasting and stuff here, people expect that it's going to be like terrible, I think. It's really not. Like you said, it's like really rich and has like robust flavor. As long as you don't have too much of that goldenrod, it can be some of the best. What do we use to treat for OGAD?
So I'll answer that honestly. I use Amatraz. We do knockdown with Amatraz. And then this year, instead of using a OA vaporizer, I'm actually going to try a OA fogging process.
We alternate treatments. So we don't
just stick on one thing, but usually use Amatraz to do a knockdown after we pull our honey supers. And then going in, we will be doing, whenever I'm doing all my fall feeding, I'll have a vaporizer. It's kind of like a cannon with me. We'll be doing OA vaping every time we feed.
So I do have a point for the OA vaping because that's what I have is the big cannon. Don't do it during the summer.
Oh yeah. The heat
killer. I had to do a knockdown because I had a few hives that were super high and the mite level. So I thought, oh, let me do an OA knockdown and then put my strips in. Oh yeah, I lost those hives.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, that heat is already, it's already pretty warm when you start using that thing. So you can basically cook them too. So
yeah, that's why we used Amatraz in August. And then basically we kind of do a catch up for.
And just to give September. People an idea, like we didn't just start off thinking we were going to treat. We've done essentially treatment-free beekeeping on certain years. We've done, we replaced queens. We are constantly monitoring like that type of stuff, including Varroa hygienic behaviors. But
yeah, the stuff that we have right now,
but we're also still very much growing. And so like knowing that for us, mites are not really an option for where we're trying to get. We have to keep our mite counts low. And so the treatment for us was a decision that had to be made.
Yeah. But at the end of the day, like honestly, mites, no mites, as long as you got some bees to be able to make splits, you can always come back from it. And then the more you're splitting, the less your mite count's going to be because you're doing brood breaks. So there's a lot of different things that you can do. And I mean, honestly,
we do all those things. So you're talking about amatraz, you're talking about OA, but we also do a ton of splits and brood breaks.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I can talk about Varroa hygiene and treatments and like hours and hours and hours on.
Well, and we're doing as much as we can.
Oh,
I mean, not what?
I mean, I guess I mean, there might be something out there that I don't know about.
Well, I'm sure there is.
Yeah, I have a new fall treatment I'm looking at is the new Formic Pro that they just came out with the gel.
Yeah.
The Mite Away Quick Strip. So if
it
gets cold enough, then that's what I'm gonna try on my.
That's the tough part about Texas is some of the treatments we can't even really effectively do with the way our weather is. So
yeah, and it's kind of one of those things that you want to get the Varroa down before you start raising your winter bees, but a lot of those treatments we can't even really use until they've already birthed all the winter bees, and so you're like you're not really you're doing a knockdown on all the Varroa and you're treating for it, but the damage has already been done. So it's really, really tricky here because of our heat and stuff, but
we're learning. So, all right, y'all. There's so much common sense, right? Keeping bees in the fall and winter. Yeah, exactly. Scott says he'd try voodoo magic to combat Varroa if he thought it would help. It might. Let me know.
Have to get one of those little stuffed Varroa mites and start pinning them.
Yeah. I think I mean, hey, it can't hurt. Oh my goodness. All right.
Well, Ashley and Justin, I appreciate y'all coming on again. I know y'all hit where our tips are, but it's always good to hear from somebody else. Like I said, we get enough of Blake and myself and some of the bigger ones talking all the time. We got the classes going on, but when you got somebody else, offering other treatments or kind of reminding people the same thing, we're all in it for the bees. So it's good to hear from somebody else to just reiterate, hey, this is what we got to do. And like I said, another plug, TBA convention's coming up. If you're going to go,
come check it out.
If you're a first-time beekeeper, you should have had your free membership, so you count as a member for that.
Yes,
so
we get a discount.
That's
right. Make sure you log in to the website before you buy your tickets so you get your member discount. And then like I said, it's going to be a really cool event just because the programs themselves are really great. But then also, like I said, it's at the Moody Garden, so you could probably slip away and do something cool while you're there. I like Moody Gardens, so.
And it's not too cold to get in the water either. I've done it.
I know. I was kind of thinking about that. I don't know what it's going to be like in November.
It's cool, but you can
do it. I love walking on the beach when it's cool outside. So maybe I won't go swimming, but check out the sand, feel the breeze, do the boardwalk thing, stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. Like I said, it's always great to hear from you, especially since you also represent our TBA presidency. So, it's great to get updates and a class at the same time. For those that were not on earlier, yes, the fair is going on. We are taking scheduling now. So if you'll contact my dad at john@sabinecreekhoney.com, we can get you on a schedule. If you have honey that you want to have displayed, we will be taking that too. So
This one too.
if you can get it to us, just email me at skip@sabinecreekhoney.com. I can make sure you get it in my hands so we can display it before the 24th, which is the day of the start of the fair. So we'd like to have as many labels as we can. I know this was a hard year, but if you do have some available, then we will definitely put it out there and showcase your label out there. So I don't have anything else. It's good to see so many people on. Like I said, I wish we could have done it in person. And then I could have taken Ashley to dinner or something like that. We could have talked some more, but we will be, like I said, through the fall for sure. We don't know what our spring season is going to be like, but we'll keep you updated. So right now, just if you want to volunteer for the fair, please contact us. We would love to see you there. Other than that, I do not have anything else. So thank you again, Ashley and Justin. We will be seeing y'all in November. All right. Thanks a lot.